So we're seeing a lot more catastrophic fires in Canada and around the world. And you have to understand the background, what we need for fire. So there's three ingredients for fire. The fuel, that's the stuff that burns, the needles, the leaves, the grass, the trees, how much you have, what type, how dry it is, really important. You need ignition, people and lightning, and you need appropriate weather, hot, dry, windy weather. So when you get all three, you can have high intensity fire. The catastrophic part comes into when you get this intersection between fire and society. And it will happen, it does happen. We've seen Fort McMurray, the largest natural disaster in Canadian history, around $4 billion. And we've seen the fires in California. It's only a matter of time before fire is on the landscape because you've got fuel, ignition, and weather, and it intersects with people, the communities. And whether it's a large community, a small community, doesn't matter. The impacts are increasing, and we're seeing it in Canada, around the world, because there's more people on the landscape, more value on the landscape, and there's more fire because our climate is changing. Well, you know, there's the three ingredients: the fuel, ignition, and weather. So the fuels, let's just put to the side. Let's just look at the weather. Our weather is going to be warmer and drier. So this will mean that we're going to have more fire in the landscape. And you know, why is temperature, why is warming so important? And there's three reasons. First is longer fire seasons. Our fire season is starting early in the spring and going later in the fall, so there's more opportunity for our forests and our wildlands to burn. Second, the warmer it gets, the more lightning we're starting to see. And the more lightning we have, the more fires we're going to have. And the last reason is the warmer we get, the drier the fuels become. And this is because the atmosphere's ability to suck moisture out of our fuels increases exponentially as the temperature increases. So unless we see an increase in precipitation, our fuels are going to be drier. Most of the scenarios, the models, the predictions of the future have us being warmer, but not much change in precipitation. This means drier fuels, easier for fires to start and spread. How much more fire? You know, there's lots of predictions out there, anywhere from a doubling out to 8-fold increase in fire activity. Where we're going to end up, I'm not sure, but we're going to see a lot more fire on the landscape. And of particular importance is recent results suggest that there'll be higher intensity fires, which means that there won't be able to be managed by our fire management organizations. Despite the great work they do, if a fire gets too intense, they cannot manage it directly. That means it's too dangerous to attack on the ground, and aircraft becomes ineffective, which means you have indirect attack means by a backburn. A backburn is where you go out in front of the wildfire, start a new fire backing into the wind, so it's lower intensity, and then the wildfire reaches the backfire and it runs out of fuel. Very effective, but if the wind is shifting, then it's not safe. So these are the things that are a concern. So let's count them. More area burned, higher intensity fires, longer fire seasons, more fire occurrence. Our future has a lot more fire in it. So fire is important. It's really Mother Nature at work. And in the boreal forest, the species, the trees, the animals have become accustomed to fire on the landscape. And they survive and even thrive in these regimes of semi-regular stand replacing or stand renewing fire. There are species like lodgepole pine, jack pine that have serotinous cones. It means that these cones are sealed with a waxy resin and they need fire to open the cone so that the seeds can fall out and get the next generation of lodgepole pine. Other species like aspen sucker So they're used to fire. It's natural, it cleanses, it kills disease, insects, resets the clock. It's the cycle of life for our forests in Canada, and has been going on since before people were on the landscape, because there was fuel, there was ignition, and there was hot, dry, windy weather at times. So the omega block is just the flow of the upper atmosphere in the shape of the Greek letter omega. And what's happening here is that the air is flowing around this omega-shaped flow, and any precipitation-bearing systems, the low-pressure systems, are deflected to the north or the south of this region. So where you have this high-pressure area, this ridge, you have warm, dry, sunny conditions. And in these ridges, air actually sinks, and as it sinks, it warms and dries. And dry, warm air is really conducive to fire. So blocking ridges stay at least 7 to 10 days, and no matter how wet the conditions were before this ridge, the fuels dry out. So they're ready, they're primed to burn after this period. So if you have ignition and then you get some wind, you can have a really bad fire. So omega blocks are becoming more common because our jet stream is changing, it's getting lazy, it's stagnating. And this means that these ridges stay parked where they are for even longer periods, or more intense, so it's even hotter and drier, so that everything is ready for fire to occur in the landscape. What you have to understand about the upper atmosphere, it really dictates our day-to-day weather. It really drives where the high pressure systems go, where the low pressure systems go, how intense they are, how fast they move. So this intensification of these blocking ridges will have a profound effect on how much fire we see in the landscape. And we have seen the fires in BC in 2017. There was a blocking ridge sitting right over British Columbia, omega block if you like. California, blocking ridge situation. The fires in 2014 in Northwest Territories, blocking ridge. The fires in Sweden, blocking ridge in 2014. Almost every major fire outbreak is tied to these blocking ridges. Sometimes at the tail end of the blocking ridge, because you've had the time to dry out the fuels for a very long time, and then as the blocking ridge moves or degrades, you get strong wind events that blows these fires across the landscape.